I'd like to welcome Bob Benevento to the podium as our first public guest.
Thank you. Thank you, Board. Irony is defined as a state of affairs or an event that seems deliberately contrary to what one expects and is often amusing as a result. For example, from the campaign website of Mr. Borgioli, we read, "Kids first, not politics." How ironic, coming from the most politically motivated and politically funded candidate in Santa Clara County School Board politics this year. And even more so, how amusing, coming from a person who has done virtually nothing for kids and students as compared to his opponent. But allow me to comment on irony even further. We know that there are three types of irony: verbal irony, situational irony, and dramatic irony. Dramatic irony is defined as when an audience watching a play understands what's going on in the situation, while the characters are unaware of what's happening. Let me give you an example. These events actually transpired here in Morgan Hill at the Santa Clara County Board of Education. The names have been changed to protect the innocent. About 3 years ago, a speaker approached the podium here at MHUSD at a board meeting. Let's call the speaker Claude. Claude, a well-known community leader, approached the board to criticize the board for behavior he thought detrimental to the school district and the community. Claude did not state his name as it was announced by the board president, nor did he state his role in the community and his position on another educational board. He made his statement and then sat down. The statement irritated some people on the MHUSD board. Subsequently, a trustee from the MHUSD Board of Education who did not like Claude's statements traveled to the County Board of Education, a meeting where Claude is a member. This trustee, again to protect the innocent, let's call her Jean. Jean approached the County Board of Education. Now Jean, who is very proud of her role as a trustee for MHUSD, approaches the podium and says, "My name is Jean, and although I am a member of the board at MHUSD, I am here speaking as a private citizen." Now, that's because Jean believes that when it's in her best interest, she should not be recognized as an elected official sworn to defend the Constitution of the United States as well as that of the state of California. So Jean goes on to address the county board and says something to the effect that, quote, "I don't like what Claude said to my board, and I think county board member Claude should be censured by the County Board of Education and should be prevented from addressing the MHUSD board again." Now here's the dramatic and perhaps pathetic irony. Jean does not recognize that she would seek to deny Claude the very right and privilege that Jean was enjoying that night, the right to freedom of speech. In effect, Jean is saying, "I want that privilege for me, but I want you to deny it to Claude." How ironic. Everybody on the county board that heard these comments knew exactly what had just happened, but ironically, Jean just did not understand that. Consequently, the County Board of Education took no action against Claude. The final irony here is that which is called situation irony. Situation irony is when there is an incongruity between what is expected to happen and what actually happens. Everybody in local education expected a large political tactic to make a commitment to Mr. Borgioli, and maybe he's getting. Thank you so much for your time.
Pulpit is Kathy Sullivan. Thank you, Kathy. And if Kathy exceeds 3 minutes, the following speaker, Brian Sullivan, will cede his time.
Thank you.
I'm here to say that I hope this election will restore what has been.
I don't know if the mic is on.
I'm here to say that I hope this election will restore what has been a dysfunctional board for several years, to a board of 7 individuals with an understanding of the practical application of good governance skills. Our children need a board that can collaborate and deliberate on solutions that will build an education environment to serve them well as they prepare to be productive citizens and leaders in a rapidly evolving world. Children live what they learn, and teachers and school personnel, trustees included, influence how they think and behave. In most cases today, our children spend more waking hours with their teachers in schools than they do with their parents in their homes. Our schools significantly shape our children's minds. To have leaders, including trustees, who are unethical, sexist, racist, bullying, dishonest, and downright deceptive is doing our children, teachers, and educational system a significant disservice. We should ensure that the candidates we support and elect bring the values of ethical behaviors that we expect from our children and those who teach or otherwise mentor them. This includes trustees on a board of education. The glossy mailers with bullets of accomplishments do not provide information and actions on accountability. It takes time and effort to research, but we need to better engage parents, teachers, and the electorate at large to ask questions, ask people about their experience with the candidates. Does this ring true? Do some online research, dig back a few years using multiple sources and probing phrases. Read back meeting minutes and understand the hidden agendas that will carry over to board meetings and present barriers to collaborative decisions. Mr. Borgioli, a trustee on this board, is now running for a seat on the County Board of Education. Through his past actions, he has exhibited a lack of ethical behavior in several instances and has shown little regard for the understanding and practical application of the principles of good governance. Some of the details on these actions are buried and need to be researched, but they're available. I worked with him on a committee, and through my personal experience, I found this man to be unethical, dishonest, and self-aggrandizing. I just talked to someone at a school where he brags about his volunteering and was told that in reality his presence was not welcomed. He lied about an endorsement for his campaign that came to light in the press. I could go on and suspect that many of you have had similar experiences, and I've talked to a lot of people, and when Gino's name comes up, it's kind of an interesting conversation. I cannot conceive of him serving on the County Board of Education to expand his negative behaviors on a bigger stage, impacting thousands more students. Our children will create our future. It is important that people we elect make the policies that impact their lives hold the highest in ethical values of respect, honesty, and inclusiveness. I urge the community to please vote for candidate Claudia Rossi and for the candidates on this school board slate that exhibit the qualities that we want in our elected officials. Thank you for your time.
Please come to the podium. Welcome, Matthew.
I've known Mr. Gino since I was 6 years old. That's half of my life. I remember the first time that he came into my first grade classroom and read the part of the Cornerstone book, Have You Filled the Bucket Today? I knew my mother was coming to visit. I knew that my friend's grandfather was going to be with her, but I didn't know who he was. I want to thank you, Mr. Gino, for being such an important person in your life and a caring book. I've been listening to Mormon books for a very long time, but I've never seen a read of Mr. Gino before. They were very funny and silly, and the whole class loved when they teamed up. Each time that Mr. Gino came to read, he shared stories about his youth and what it was like to grow up in New York. He told stories about bully behavior, and he made all of us kids feel secure and made sure we knew that we were not alone. Mr. Gino taught us that we are interconnected and that we all need to have empathy for others. He told me a story about when he was in the 5th grade and how he tried out for his basketball team. He didn't make it because at the time he was a little bit short. Then, a few days later, we shot hoops. Mr. Gino was actually pretty good at basketball. He learned that even if the team didn't want him, he would persevere and do his best work. Sometimes I got teased for being tall, for my age, or for what I wore. Mr. Gino's stories showed me that we all have things to deal with. And no matter who we are, there will be people who say and do unkind things. But the only things we can control is how we react. No matter what people say to you or about you, you can overcome. Mr. Gino really believes in Project Cornerstone, and he asks us that the program helps to teach. I will always respect you, Mr. Gino, for following your beliefs and working hard for me, my parents, and all the students and families in Morgan Hill and beyond.
Thank you, Matthew.
I'm here tonight in support of Gino Borgioli. I'll be honest, I didn't meet Gino on my own account. I met him with my wife, introduced us. Gino and my wife worked together as partners, readers for Project Cornerstone at my son's former elementary school. My wife was one of the first non-staff members at the school to be trained in Project Cornerstone, asset development, and how to be an ABC reader. She had vested interest in creating a caring and bully-free campus for our son and the entire student body. As a former educator, she saw firsthand the injustice of bully behavior and the abuse of power that can occur at school campuses. She came home after book training and explained that she had a new Project Cornerstone partner. After the first reading together, she realized that she had met her match. Gino was passionate to get the program implemented and growing at the school. Even though he had not been active at the school prior, he threw himself into volunteering. He learned and modeled the key tenets of Project Cornerstone and partnered with my wife for 4 years. He decided to run for the Morgan Hills Unified School District trustee, and I wanted to know his plans, and he made it clear that his key points were parent communication, safety, and success for all students, as well as access to technology. Being a volunteer for several years gave Gino great insight into how silenced parents have felt for a long time. Parental concerns, no matter how large or small, were being disregarded. Despite the fact that the trustees are elected to serve the constituents, it became clear that many parents that the interests of the trustees and the superintendent superseded the concerns of the parents and the students. Gino promised to be available to the parents and accountable to them. He does not shy away from controversial topics. He listens and takes action. When safety on school campuses became a serious issue, Gino listened to the parents, and he ensured that the Measure G funds have been used as promised to create safer, updated, and healthier campuses. Gino promised to get computers into the hands of students. The district wanted our children to be literate in technology. But as I learned, there was no plan to roll out Chromebooks. There were no policies for the use of iPads or apps. Gino saw firsthand that the parents at my son's former school funded the computer lab with donations of time, money, contributions, and expertise. I admire Gino for taking on a job as a trustee. Knowing that he was on the board gave me some hope that the parents had a voice in one way or another. And I thank you very much, Mr. Gino. Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm here to directly speak to you, Gino, but I'm also speaking on behalf of many parents that couldn't be here this evening. I do not pull punches, and I do not shy away from speaking up for what I believe in. And Gino, I believe in you. Gino is my parents' generation, but you would never know it. When most people look at their retirement, they are looking towards the end, the later years, when the things slow down and sunsets are counted, but not Gino. Gino has sped up. He's volunteered hundreds of hours at Paradise Valley Elementary School and at local nonprofits. He ran for and won a seat on this very board of trustees. He took masters in government and become a powerful advocate for students and their parents. He has become an asset champion and a survivor of a hit and run and this particular kangaroo court. When Gino informed me that he was running for the county trustee position, I cautioned him that his opponent would fight dirty. I've witnessed this in action. She'd get her cronies to disparage him, but Gino assured me that he was running a clean campaign and he was a contender because he had something to offer to the county students, not just those of this district. Gino has an actual record to run on. He's done as he promised. 21st century learning and technology is in the hands of students grades 2 to senior. He launched a listening program that was summarily extinguished by our illustrious superintendent and his allied trustees. Not deterred, Gino welcomed correspondence and actually responds to parents' emails. He is available to listen to families and students, and he truly cares about the youth in our community. He focused on updating school facilities to be modern, safe, and held those responsible for implementing Measure G funds accountable. Gino has dedicated the last 4 years to doing what is right by the students that he represents. He is vastly concerned about the students that fit in the category of underperforming. He wants to see a continuation of schools open for our at most at-risk population, not bolted and evaporated from our districts. Gino has worked diligently, and I hope to see him sworn in as our county trustee.
Thank you. For public comment, Heather Roscoe.
You believe correctly, Mr. Patterson. You made it very clear that Public comment is for comments within your jurisdiction, the board's jurisdiction. For 22 years I've been teaching, and for 22 years every day I have to tell one of my students, just because he kicked you doesn't mean it's right to kick him back, first of all. Is it somebody's campaign website within your jurisdiction? What can you do about who's running for another position? I don't think you can do anything about that. You know, there's a lot of hearsay and gossip in this coming out up here, okay? So that's one thing. You need to do your own background checks, your own research, okay? I did have this ready just in case, but I was hoping I wouldn't have to use it. So, as far as the freedom of speech, there are some places where you check your freedom of speech at the door. That would be a courtroom, an airport, that would be your school. I mean, imagine, when you tell your principal exactly what you think of her or him, does something good happen? No, okay? So there are some places where your freedom of speech is actually curtailed, okay? The time here is valuable in this boardroom, and it should be used to talk about the MHUSD issues, solutions, okay? We don't have much time. We have a lot of students and a lot of education now needs to happen, okay? So again, public comment is not a free-for-all up here, okay? There are bylaws that tell you what public comment is, and it's not a free-for-all. It's for what is in their jurisdiction. Morgan Hill Unified School District. Thank you.
Thank you, President Patterson. First, before I get into the other subject I want to address, I'd like to recommend a book that I'm reading right now, and I think it's very fortuitous that we have the majority of our school board candidates here, because I really do think that if you spend some time reading this before you take office, it will be of enormous benefit. The book is called Leadership in Turbulent Times. The author is Doris Kearns Goodwin, one of my favorite historians. And Goodwin has put together a study, comparative study, of Lincoln, Theodore Roosevelt, FDR, and LBJ. She worked directly with LBJ when she was a very young person in the White House. And as you may know, she's written biographies of each of these four individuals, of which I read and I recommend to you as well. One of the key points, I've gotten about halfway through, one of the key points that she points out is that early in their careers and early in their lives, each one of these individuals made very grievous mistakes, similar to the kinds of mistakes that I made when I was an early board member here. But they recovered, and the reason they became successful was they learned from their mistakes. She said that's the key differentiator between a good leader and a poor leader, one who can learn from their mistakes and go forward. And so that brings me to my second topic, and I want to support what President Patterson has been trying to do with great frustration, obviously, and that is to make sure that the public comment session is not used as a political platform or a platform for mobbing a targeted individual who is Trustee Borgioli. There's actually two aspects of law that I'd like all trustees, trustee candidates to be aware of going forward. One of them is in the Brown Act. And if you look at section 54954, 54954.43, it talks about public comments. And it says that every agenda for regular meetings shall provide an opportunity for members of the public to directly address the legislative body on any item of interest to the public. and it goes on, and it says that that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the legislative body. And I believe that's exactly what President Patterson is trying to refer to. So, as she mentioned, and I think one of the speakers mentioned as well, it's not, as one speaker said last time, it is not freedom to say anything you want. If it is, maybe after I'm no longer on the board, I'll get up here during your public session and read off my favorite recipes. And maybe bring some of my friends to do that as well, and see if that is a good use of public time. It's on the same level, folks. And in addition to that, there's something else that I hope that the new board will take into consideration. Government Code 12950.1. That is Article 1, Unlawful Practices, passed in 2014, the Gonzales legislation, that talked about training for every employer that has more than 50 employees in abusive conduct. Not the same as sexual harassment training, abusive conduct. We currently do not do that in this district. And I hope that you, as a new board, will ensure that that is done. At this point, there is not a penalty except to get an order from the Attorney General to do it, if you don't do it. But it talks about abusive conduct. It talks about what that's about. And it's really exactly the kind of behavior we've been seeing at public comment during the last 3 or 4 board meetings. And it's something that every employer is obligated to ensure that each employee is protected against. It's basically harassment. It's basically attempting to prevent the person from doing their job as they normally would, etc. And all of us trustees are employees just as anybody else is in the district here. So I do hope that as we go forward, that the new board will try to invoke a good spirit and not to have one of the individuals made a comment a few months ago that surely with 5 trustees exiting, there'd be a new majority on the board. I hope there's no majority on the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Yes, Mr. Borgioli.
Thank you, Trustee Patterson. So many of you know I'm a fan of the California School Boards Association, a graduate of Masters in Governance. Every year they have a conference, and every year they talk about the Brown Act. And I've been to several of those sessions. Last year there were 4 attorneys in that session talking about the Brown Act. What people can say and actually some of the things that they can't say. So I called CSBA just to refocus on what that presentation was all about. And in fact, for the first time I've heard since President Patterson has been president, her mention speaking within the subject matter and the jurisdiction of the district. I think that's really key, because if you go outside of that jurisdiction, what you're actually doing and allowing at that podium is abusing the resources of Morgan Hill Unified School District. That is taxpayer money that we're abusing. And the Brown Act does not protect the public when they make slanders and defaming remarks. It's right in the Brown Act, and it says that. So you can say anything about any of the elected officials. You can admonish us, you can call us names, you can do a whole variety of things up here. But you cannot defame and slander an individual. And it says it right in the Brown Act. I would encourage the new trustees to really read up on what Trustee Gerard is indicating. The Brown Act actually points out that individuals who make slanderous and defaming remarks are open to civil and legal action. That's very difficult to prove, especially when you're an elected official. However, it's not difficult when it's videotaped and somebody defames and slanders you. For example, tonight I was called a sexist and a racist. That has yet to be proven, and that same person went up to the county Board of Education with her husband and said a lot more defaming and slanderous remarks. Fortunately, that was videotaped also. And so these people are open to civil and legal liabilities because of that. So be careful what you say up there. Don't abuse that podium for political antics. Yes, I focus on kids first, not politics. That's been my motto 4 years ago, and it's my motto now. So I just would like to caution going further on, be careful what you say up there, because it's really abusing that podium, and that's, I think, what Trustee Patterson was trying to avoid in her remarks about keep it within the jurisdiction of the Morgan Hill Unified School District. Thank you.